Welcome to Following Films, where we dig into the stories behind the movies and the people who challenge the way we watch them. I'm your host, Chris Maynard. Today I'm joined by philosopher and film lover Matthew Strohl, author of the new book Hard to Watch, a passionate and thought-provoking call to expand the way we engage with cinema. We're living in a golden age of movie access. Between streaming, physical media, repertory theaters, and more, there's never been a better time to explore the full range of what cinema has to offer. And yet most of us tend to stick with the familiar, the comfortable, the easy to digest. Described as part film guide, part self-help book, Hard to Watch is both an enthusiastic celebration of cinematic ambition and a thoughtful roadmap for getting more out of the films that don't come with easy answers. Matthew Strohl is a professor of philosophy at the University of Montana, and his writing explores the intersection of aesthetics, art, and popular culture. He's also the author of Why It's Okay to Love Bad Movies, so it's safe to say his taste is both expansive and refreshingly open-minded. In our conversation, we'll talk about what it means to truly watch a film, why discomfort can be a gift, and how embracing the hard stuff can change the way we see not just cinema, but ourselves. Let's get into it. Hope you enjoy the show. I really enjoyed this book quite a bit, but finding out that it was the counterpart to It's Okay to Love Bad Movies made me really love this book.
Oh, that's awesome. Glad to hear it.
Because I am somebody who, if you start looking through the movies back there, it's not just, if it's only Bergman, you're not going to appreciate, for lack of a better one, a Police Academy or something like that. Not even one I own, but something along those lines there needs to be good days. There needs to be bad days to appreciate good ones. You have to have pain to appreciate pleasure. Those kinds of things have to be tied together.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, yeah, totally. It's the yin and yang of cinephilia, right? That's the whole. You got it perfectly because that's the whole concept of the two books. Is that like you can't, like if you do one of these without the other, your life is incomplete.
oh,
Yeah,
for sure. If you
yeah,
go down that criterion path, which I recommend people do, but you need to, go like I watched Novocaine this weekend. It's a lot of fun. I had no problem. That was a good time at the movies. There's nothing wrong with that movie. I don't think it's something that'll be revered 30 years from now that'll be important for people to remember, but there's a worse way to spend a Sunday night, So I think that it's important to have both those things. Something like your deconstruction of To the Wonder, though, was something that I love that movie on first viewing. It was just something about that his Malick's later style where it does feel disjointed. I actually really appreciate it. It's like going to an art installation where you're just looking at these different images and putting it together. So it breaks normal convention. But if every movie was that, I don't think I would love movies anymore.
no, exactly. Because well, again, like you can't appreciate it as breaking convention if there aren't some set of conventions that you're familiar with, right? It's like there's this whole set of values that depend on the rules in order to break them, right? Like you couldn't have punk rock if we didn't have a restrictive society, right? It's the
Exactly.
same idea, yeah.
So then, how do you know which of these films? Because the thing I'm really impressed with is the number of times you're able to revisit some of these. There's this thing that Ron Howard said a long time ago. He's like, they could stop making movies today, and I would never have enough time to watch all the great movies I haven't seen.
Right.
So with that only getting exponentially worse every year of the things that I need to catch up on, how can you make the time or allot that to go back? And how do you know you're on the right path with something? Or if you're chasing, have you ever been a dog chasing its tail where you watch something 5 times, you're like, okay, there's actually nothing here.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not going to name names on this, but I had somebody recently ask me to review their movie, and I like went down this road like really far. I spent a lot of time on it, and I sent the guy the review that I had written, and he was pissed. He was like you didn't understand my movie at all, and I was like, maybe I just don't like it. Right. Maybe it's just I came up empty because if you don't if this isn't right, then I don't like it. Was essentially where I was at with it, and I had to look at myself in the mirror and I had to say, wow, that was a big waste of time. Right. So no, it happens, but you got to take those risks, right? It's like anything in life. Like the analogy I like to use is like think about the person who when they're visiting a new city they've never been to before, they go to the Olive Garden or they go to Subway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like you know what you're gonna get and you know you're gonna like it, right? But like you could have gone to whatever random Salvadorian strip mall place down the street, and you might not have liked it, but it might have been something amazing you never had before, right? And I think that like when people are super risk averse about aesthetics, when they're not adventurous about aesthetics because they want to like make sure that everything they do is something they like, they miss out. They become boring people, and it's like I don't want to go on vacation with the person who insists on eating at the Olive Garden, and I don't want to
I'm
like
with
be
you.
movie buddies with the person who won't take risks, right? Who
Yeah.
won't, yeah,
Well, I could not agree with you more on that. You have to be willing to be open. That's the idea of movies anyway, is to see something outside of yourself. At least for me, to be open to different worldviews, points of view, to different experiences, and to see the world through somebody else's eyes for just an hour and a half. And with that, that's the empathy machines. That's a huge portion of that is you have to be open. If you become very dogmatic about what the rules are around cinema, then what the hell's the point? But for some people, I get it.
right.
You work three jobs. You want this little piece of light entertainment, but for people that want to actually have a more, I don't know, a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation of cinema, it takes a little bit of work to get there.
Yeah, there's an embarrassment of riches in the world. There's too much good stuff, right?
Yeah,
You can't read every good book, you can't go to
no.
every interesting museum, you can't see every good movie. And like you're right. If for some people, movies are a very small part of their life, and that's fine, right? But like part of what I'm trying to do in that book is suggest what possibilities open up when you really throw yourself into it, right? Like I try to convey like the sense that for me it's become a big central part of my life and I love it, and it's like something that gives my life meaning, and in a time when that can be difficult, right? In a time when there's so much disposable bullshit flying around that it can be hard to feel like day to day your life has meaning, right? And for me, I find meaning in having a deep relationship with movies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you talk about in here quite a bit in the beginning of it, the first chapter, is the weakness of will and this idea of what we put in our queue. They're kind of like it's the to read list on our nightstand that we all have. It's like I'm going to pull out these 5 books and these are the things I'm going to read every night before I go to bed, and yet it ends up being the phone that most of us fall asleep reading through articles and doing garbage like that. It's just you talked the story about the Criterion movies that were on Hulu and wanting to dive into those, but you had to make it a regimen to actually do that because it's so easy now to just say, well, I could watch, Love is Blind with my wife, or, I could watch Project Runway or something like that and
Yeah.
absolutely have a lovely evening. But it doesn't carry the same weight. And it carries more weight when you've had a couple of those Project Runway nights, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the way one of my friends used to put it was, back in the day, you go down to the video store, your public library, and there's like 100 movies,
Yeah.
right? And you're going to see all of them over time, right? You're going
Yeah.
to see every single one of them. And that's going to lead you to diversify and branch out and watch things that you never would watch. Whereas when you have too many options, it's so easy to just revert to the lowest common denominator, to just let your worst impulses just go. And you just have infinite selection, just like more of that, more of that, more of that, right?
Yeah.
You're right. And and like as I explained in the book, this is something that happened to me. Like I had several years, 9 years of my life approximately, where I gradually slipped into this kind of haze of like just entertainment. And it's so easy. It's like the Island of the Lotus Eaters in the Odyssey or something, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's so easy to be there in that world of entertainment, flipping through your phone, watching whatever American Idol or whatever bullshit's on TV, and just time passes, right? But it does like it takes you have to treat it like work in a way, and I know people don't want to do that. People, the last thing they want to do is make their hobby feel like work. But the point is, it doesn't keep feeling like work, right? It's you have to get over that hump, and you have to change. Well, I'm not saying you have to. If you wanna reap the
Right.
rewards I'm talking about, right? If you want to reap those rewards, you got to get over the hump of your habits, and you've got to create new habits that are going to and like so now, after years of living this way, I come home and I don't have any desire to flip through my phone and watch bullshit on TV, right? Like I come home and I'm
Yep.
like, let's throw on some Bergman, right?
Yeah.
Like and it becomes exciting. It becomes
Let's just toss on scenes from a marriage because that
right,
just sounds like
exactly.
a
It becomes joyous, right?
yeah.
Though it becomes something that you look forward to. And again, though, that's something that you have to habituate yourself into. Just like, and again, like, so I like the analogy of exercise and health. I know some people, it's like, oh well, it's a sort of like a boneheaded comparison, but for me, it makes sense because like, when you get out of shape, exercising sucks, right?
Yeah.
But once you get back in the habit of exercising, you start to love it and crave it and need it. And it's the same thing with your mind, right? And with watching films or engaging with art that really forces your mind to be active.
Oh, absolutely. I think that that's an incredibly rewarding pursuit for me personally. I do enjoy that. Now, there's a fine line though,
Yeah,
where my challenge and my thought exercise could be somebody else's pretentious dribble, and I think that's something that is open for debate and something that's actually opinion isn't necessarily wrong. Some opinions are more informed than others, and there's
yeah,
opinions you can trust. You talked about the video store. You go to a video store, and there's that person whose their taste you trust them, and so they would have little things that were on their recommended wall, and you say, okay, I trust this person. I don't know. I've seen all the new releases I want to see. I'm going to check this one out. Critics, like you talk about in the book, become the same thing, where it's you can trust critics to kind of go down those paths. But then other times, critics also will completely steer you the wrong way. When I was reading that chapter, I was thinking about movie from last year. It was In a Violent Nature,
yeah,
and in that, it's very quiet. It's small, and you're following the Jason character. So because you give the movie so much space, people start automatically filling it in with deeper meaning and thought. And it
yeah,
was really just almost an extra to listen to the director. He's like, no, I just wanted to see how long we could push this and make it tolerable and still
right.
have tension. And oh, well, then you made it 4:3. So clearly that's something to create isolation in a wide open space. So you do now. It's because he used to watch Friday the 13th movies on VHS when he was a kid. So all slasher movies are 4:3. And
Right, right, right.
so to
Yeah.
me, the richness of watching that movie was part of filling in those blanks. And to hear him say these things, how wrong I was about everything, kind of hurt the experience to some degree.
Yeah, I think I've come to the conclusion that not always, but for the most part, the last thing you want to do is listen to a director talk about their own work, right? Because it's like, I mean, I got friends who are professional artists, and like what they tell me and what makes sense to me is that like when you come up with something really good, it's never something where you have like that's very deliberate. It's never like, oh, if I
Mm,
do this, it'll mean that, it'll accomplish this. It's just you just create it, it just flows out, right? You don't have like artists often don't have a particularly deliberate set of intentions, right? And
yeah.
so, and that's an old idea back to Plato, right? So, when we view like a movie, the last thing I think we should be trying to do is like do a post mortem on exactly how they want us to think of it, and because with the way they want us to think of it might be much less interesting than the way it lands for us under our own power, if that makes right.
Yeah.
And it's like the same thing with paintings at the museum, like the wall text. Whenever artists write their own wall text at a gallery, I just don't even read that. I'm gonna not like this painting, right? So yeah, I see what you're saying for sure. However, one word that I agree with you, there's a kind of balance, but one word I do dislike is pretentious, right? You said at the
Well,
very beginning what you said.
it's
Yeah,
just in the strictest definition of the word pretentious, which
yeah,
is just it's elevated above what it actually is. And
totally.
so somebody could be looking at this and saying, this is three squiggles on a blank
Yeah,
canvas. How is that art? And if you're actually moved by it, then it's
yeah,
art. If it's just your move, if you're trying to find meaning in it and you're looking at and trying to understand something, I don't maybe you'll get there when you have a deeper understanding of what it was doing at its time and the context of how it was subversive or whatever is going on in that painting. But if it doesn't move you, it doesn't move you. And but it can
Totally
take
agree.
time for things
Yeah,
to
yeah.
hit.
I totally agree. What I would say though is that I think that when we call things pretentious, right? And it's something that, it's not like I never call anything pretentious. I just called something pretentious 20 minutes ago, right? But like when we do that, when we call something pretentious, there's a assertion that we're making, which again, this is what pretentious means is that it's pretending to be more than it really is,
Yeah,
it's got the inflated sense of importance or something like that. But the thing is, um, like often, um, we haven't done our due diligence in trying to
sure.
discover and unpack what it might be really doing. So I think people very often use the word pretentious as a way to excuse themselves for their own lack of curiosity, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They see some painting that's three squiggly lines and their first response is that's pretentious. Or they put on To the Wonder and they watch 20 minutes of it, have no idea what's going on, and that's pretentious, right? But again, they're excusing themselves from actually having to reckon with what the thing really is. Right. So I think it's a word that we should use with great hesitancy because it carries this implication that we've done our due diligence and often we haven't.
Hmm.
Yes.
Well, I tend to use it pointed at myself so
Yeah.
that I have
Yeah.
moments
Yeah.
of pretension where
Sure.
my take on something, my opinion is probably I'm trying to find meaning where there was no intent. And so
Totally.
that's just part of what I do when I
Yeah.
start to when I rewatch things, when I reread things, when I revisit works of art, great art that just draws me back in, to the wonder. I could talk about that one for an hour on its own, just because David Lynch was one of those guys that first cracked open my mind in the way that things didn't have to make narrative sense if they made emotional sense to me. I didn't need to understand the plot if I understood the emotion of it. And I
Yeah.
think Lynch and Malick are very similar in that way, where their stories, there's an emotional honesty that's right there. You can see the emotion of what's going on in it, but the actual mechanics of the plot and how it works, somewhat secondary. Maybe less so in Malick, where there is a clear story there. It's just a lot of it's left out for you to fill in the blanks.
That's a great comparison. I never actually lumped those two guys together in my mind, but they're kind of like the sacred and the profane of their generation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And they really are like two of the sort of towering tiers of American cinema since in my lifetime. I mean, I'm
yeah.
in my early 40s, so it's like that's the generational bullseye for me, right? Those two.
Well, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
48, so I think that's
Yeah,
where it
yeah.
would stand. So it was
Yeah.
the this was the first art house director to me, and I think both in the same way, they're both guys that were able to do straight films when they wanted to. That they
Oh
have
yeah.
the ability to tell a straight story if they want to.
Quite literally
Not
in
not
Lynch's
not, not
case.
no pun on
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
they can tell a normal movie, and that is an example of it. You have because you have an eraser head in your quiver. It's not surprising you have an Inland Empire, but then when you have straight story in there also, that's something or you have the Elephant Man. That's something that lets you know I could do this the normal conventional way if I wanted to, but this is how I'm choosing to tell this story, which I think carries some weight there also because when you're seeing first time filmmakers, it's difficult to give them that much lead, to give them that much, room. And I don't know if that's fair or not, because it's you almost kind of have to have that vote of confidence that this is worth me going on this journey, as opposed to sitting through a film festival where I've seen too many bad movies and did I not give them enough of a chance and go back and figure out what they were getting at?
Yeah, totally. You got it. Yeah, it's like there's somebody I mentioned in the last chapter of the book is my friend Colin Brinkman, who he's a pretty active guy on film Twitter and Letterboxd, and his what he's known for and what he really enacts is this kind of spirit of radical generosity towards every movie. Right?
Hmm.
Again, it's not that he doesn't always work. There are cases where he's like, no, actually, I hated that. Very rare though, right? He tries to his motto, as it were, is to approach every movie as though it were by your favorite director, right?
Interesting.
And I think there's something that he's getting at that's really deep that idea, which is that like we often, I think, deceive ourselves about how partial and how biased and how invested we are, right? Like everybody loves to adopt like, oh, I'm just being impartial, I'm just being objective, right? But I think this is a fantasy. Like I don't think that I think when it comes to art, there's no such thing, as it were. I mean, there's a way you can like report impartially on the historical importance of a work or something. But I
Sure.
think like when you're going to react to a work and you're gonna sort of issue a judgment about how much about how much you value it, there's no doing that from outside of yourself, right? And so the way that you think of yourself and your own taste and your interests and the way that you that's going to have a huge effect on the way you engage with a movie. So often people will watch a movie that like it's like you never gave it a chance. There are movies where I put
Yeah.
them on, I'm like, oh, I'm going to hate this, right? And I end up hating it, and I think, yup, objectively bad, right? But the fact is that I went into it locked and loaded, ready to go to hate it, even if I'm kidding myself about that, right? And so there's this possibility that again that he tries to live, which is treat every movie like it's going to be great, and just give it the full benefit of the doubt. Now, again, like I don't do that. I don't want to do that, right? But I'm glad that he's doing it, and I really admire that, and I admire his just his sensibility and who he is.
Well, there's something that happens more now than it used to in film criticism and in just sort of the dialogue around films where there's a hive mind that I think wasn't there, where movies had a chance to breathe. Art had a chance to breathe for a minute before the final verdict came out on it. And it seems like now, before something's done with its festival run, people have already decided what this thing is. And that goes both ways because there's times when a film can seem like it's a lot more than it is because it just gets that festival buzz going. And that is absolutely a thing. When you find a group of 150 people in a theater that watch 10 movies a day, they find one weird one that did something different. It was just a whole bunch of vanilla ice cream the way that this one programmer put it to me. There's this whole everything's vanilla, and then you find one that's vanilla with chips of shit in it, and that's the one they're going to be attracted to. It's not that it
Right,
tasted better, but it was just different. It was
right,
something that was different than everything else they had seen. Now, the average person who goes out and sees 10, 20 movies a year, something like that, watches something. If you go to the theater 20 times a year, you're basically a cinephile at this point. Like nobody does that anymore. It's not the center of culture like it used to be. But if you're doing that and then you see the reviews for something of how important and how great it is, and then you go and see this thing that was just a little bit different, there was nothing there.
right.
And that take could be just as accurate as the critics because they weren't wowed by the buzz of the festival circuit or by this young voice or anything like that.
Oh, totally. And I think, the critics, there's like, I sort of divide critics in my mind into two broad categories, which is totally unfair, but it's how I think of it, right? Which is that like there are critics who are they're really like marketing agents, right?
Mm,
Like and the thing is that this is totally, I don't mean to be too derisive here because this is totally understandable in the current journalism economy, right? Like it's just there is not a lot of money flying around for freelancers, and what newspaper want back in the day people used to love reading critics that were mean and nasty all the time. It was like a people like this it's like restaurant reviews. People love a bad restaurant review. They just
the
love
the
it.
80s were especially
Yeah,
horrible for just
yeah.
tactless reviews. They were bad.
People loved it, but
Yeah,
today nobody. It's like no newspaper wants to hire someone to just like browbeat fans of Disney or something. Like to just say like
sure.
how like everything is bad and useless and pop culture is decaying. They want enthusiasm. They want someone who is going to reinforce the enthusiasm of the people who are interested in the movie. And the thing is, the person who owns that newspaper is probably the same person who owns the theater chain, right?
Yeah.
Who owns like everything is conglomerated. It's like Rotten Tomatoes and Fandango is the same thing and so on. So people understandably play into that because it's a way to find work, right? And I get it. But then there are critics who and a lot of them just sort of have to accept that they're not going to get that money, right? Either they're critics who are so good at their job that they manage to make ends meet even despite that,
Sure.
or they have another source of income. Like I like to write criticism, but I got a day job. Like I'm not trying to make a
Yeah.
living. I would never personally try to make a living at that, and I admire people who do, right? But there are critics who are just like so good at it that they get enough like DVD commentaries and so on to pay the
Sure.
bills. And
Yeah.
like a lot of those people are not in Rotten Tomatoes aggregate. They're not. They're not gonna come up first on Google. You got to seek them out and find. Follow what they're saying. And a lot of those people in that category, I think, are like really helpful, interesting, useful critics. Whereas the marketing agents, I just try. That's all noise. I just try to. I try to drown. I just try to ignore that because that's just basically trying to sell you a ticket to some corporate movie. Is what that's all that is in my mind.
Well, I go, I don't know if you ever have this sort of experiment. If you go back and look at movies from when you were 10, 12 years old, whenever you
Oh yeah,
started going to the movie on your own at a regular basis, and you would look at the year of films that were released, and you're like, I think it was 1986 or 1987, one of those years where it was like of the top 100 grossing films, I think I saw in the theater like 60 of them or something
yeah.
bananas like that. I was going to the theater that often and things would hang out so long, and it's just that you were able to do that. And now it's just such a immediate disposable art form where it's by the time, if it didn't have that huge by Thursday night, they're already writing it off. And
Yeah, it's
so
already on streaming. 2 weeks. Yeah, it's on, like it used to be. There would be several weeks to months in the theater, and then you'd
yep.
wait 6 months, and then you could rent the video, right?
Or
In the
years
beginning,
even. When I was
yeah,
a kid, it was a big deal when
right,
ET came out on VHS for the first time. And it was like 6 years later or
yeah,
something like that when that thing
right.
finally came
Oh
out.
yeah,
So
yeah, for sure.
it's a so I think that there's a part of me that's just the old man yelling at clouds about how things used to be, because it is the downside of streaming is also the thing that makes it so wonderful. It's the unlimited access. But because you're not having to work for it, I don't think you just take it for granted. The fact that you would get into a band and you would have to go out and wait every couple of weeks till you could go buy a new one of their records, or you had a friend that would let you borrow something of theirs. Now you hear something, you read something that says, I'm interested in this one thing. Okay, I can access everything they've ever done right now. And you
Yep.
don't have to spend any time ruminating over it. You find out that you're a big fan of John Carpenter, so that leads you to Howard Hawks through one of his interviews. So you start going back, and then you rub up against one of them the wrong way, and you go, I'm done with that. I'm not going to go into it. But if you had spent time and had to go through and were a little bit more methodical about the research on that, you would appreciate it more. And I think that it's ironic that this amount of access has created kind of a scarcity in our attention, and we're paying attention to all the wrong shit now. So that's why your book, I think, is for people like me, that I think it's really important.
That's why I wrote it. Like I wrote that book because I felt like I was having an experience that was really common, right?
Yeah.
Which is like in the sense of like how difficult it can be to live again like a meaningful aesthetic life, to have like that part of
Mm.
your life that you spend with art and culture feel like it's meaningful and like it's a big part of your happiness, and it's not this like sort of depressing way you waste time. Like I really have felt like how hard that is in the technological environment that we're in today, in the cultural environment we're in today. There's just so much. Film has been so devalued, right? It's been so devalued in the popular culture. As you right, like as you remember, there was a time when like the movies were the center in a
Yeah.
certain way of our shared pop culture. It was like something that everybody got excited about. And now it's like so rare for there, like there was a big Oppenheimer thing, right? And Barbie, but it's
Sure.
like so rare that there's like a sense of real excitement, like pervading the culture about a movie. It's like so rare. Yeah.
And I'm sure you have this also, when I talk to friends of mine, people that I've known for 20, 30 years now, they will flat out say, "Oh, I don't really like movies that much.
Yeah.
I just watch a TV show. I just need to find a show that I can watch with my spouse, and that's what we do. That's our thing. Don't really care. I will give it 3 seasons, then you'll like it." That kind of shit. And in my mind, I just do that quick math. I'm like, I could have watched. You won't watch Lawrence of Arabia because it's going to take 4 hours, but you expect me to watch 3 seasons of something that's not very good until you get this one thing that pays off when they find. I don't understand that math. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think TV had a golden moment
It
there, right?
did.
There was like a point when like the storytelling possibilities of like, cable, it's sort of like a pre-code where it's like, oh, we're on cable now, we can be rated R, right?
Yeah.
Right. So there was like a moment where the storytelling and also the kind of weekly serial and the higher production value stuff like The Sopranos and The Wire, that kind of thing.
Sure.
There was a moment where creativity just flooded into that world, and there were so many great shows. And I think what happened was that as these things succeeded, there was just more and more and more imitations, which is understandable,
Yeah.
right? But you get to the point where all there are is imitations anymore, where it's like where like it's like one thing succeeds, and then you got like 10 other things that are kind of like that, and it's just becomes it's just you're drowning in just like a total way. Like, so whenever I watch a show now, it's very common. I don't watch very many shows, but very often I will quit after two or three episodes because as soon as I watch a whole episode where I was like, you know what, I could have just done without that completely. We could have just. It's like, oh, we needed to. It's
Yeah.
like you can tell they're just stretching it out and bloating it and just making it into a series when really it was an idea for a movie, or really it was a 6 episode miniseries or something, and now it's going to be 4 seasons, right? And the thing is, like you said, I just really mourn the time I waste when I get sucked into one of those. Like I watch like 3, 4 shows. I watch Reacher. I watch
It's a solid show,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
It
Reacher.
should not be, it is punching above its weight class. It should not be as fun as it is. That's just a
It's really
fun
good.
show.
Yep, and I watch Warrior, but
Okay.
not much else. And it's again like it's because that I feel like I'm wasting so much time. I feel like again, like you said, I could have watched 6 movies instead of this, and it would have been so much more valuable. It would have added so much more to my life. I would have remembered it so much more. And, yeah,
That's it. That's the thing that I've always was always the mark of a film that just would annoy me more than anything else. It's when I'm walking to the car, leaving the theater, and I don't remember what I just saw by the time
yeah,
the key hits the ignition. And so much of what I watch on television is exactly that. That I've watched it, I've taken it in, I spent 16 hours, then 3.5 years later, I'm coming back into it and I don't remember any of the plot details. And I would need to go back to rewatch the entire damn thing just to have an idea of what I'm supposed to remember for this. And that to me is homework. Going back and watching a, in quotes, pretentious movie that I might actually get something out of, for that, even if it's a limited series, 10 hours. So say I could have watched 5 movies in that amount of time. Maybe 2 of them were horrible, one of them was okay, and 2 were great. I actually like that risk versus reward a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. I mean, yeah, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that is absolutely my worldview. It's like, and again, I acknowledge it's not the same for everybody, right? Like
No,
there
no, no,
there are
no,
people,
no.
and it makes perfect sense. Like you got two screaming kids or whatever, and like you can't sit down and focus on a movie, but you can put on a show that you're half ignoring, and there's like enough continuity there that it grabs your attention. I get it, right? I get it. I totally get it. I'd probably be doing the same thing. It's not a one size fits all thing, but yeah, but I think that for people who do feel that pull to cinema to really immerse themselves in it, the key message that what I'm trying to sell here is that like you got to it's work and it's rewarding, it's incredible rewarding life fulfilling work, but it's something you got to do and it's something you got to throw effort into.
Well, and kind of the last point to make on that, because agree with you completely,
Yeah.
is a lot of these things go down a lot easier than you think they do.
Oh
I
no,
mean,
they're a pleasure, a joy.
like literally
Absolutely.
first time, it doesn't take 10
Yeah.
times to crack the thing open to where you finally start getting a taste of what it possibly could be. Now, you might, to gain a fuller appreciation, need to do that. But the first time you sit down and watch Barry Lyndon, the movie's a blast. It's so much fun, and it's a hilarious movie. But you describe it on the outside of what are the kind of the individual pieces of it. This very long film that was shot without it was shot on using candlelight, and they had to use NASA lenses and these kinds of things. People were like, oh God, I could care less about that. That sounds
Yeah.
so boring. With an actor that is kind of not really well remembered for being a great actor, but it's just one of those things where it's performance met the exact role and like everything just comes together and it's fun. Seventh Seal, that's a fun movie, man. Like a lot of
Oh
these
yeah.
things that are considered, art house are actually just give them a chance. You'll have a much better time with it. If you ever get a chance to see Citizen Kane in a theater, the
Yeah.
laughs in that thing. It plays huge. The Apartment, something like that. I can go on and on and on about like
Yeah.
classic and old films. And, you look at even Russian films, there's a lot of stuff in there that's really difficult to get through. But then something like, that cracks through like Potemkin, that's actually a lot of modern filmmaking is in there. So it's fun to see where that comes from.
Yeah. Totally. No, I think you'll like this. So my Alexander Nehemias, who's a philosopher
Mhm.
who I worked with when I was a grad student, his theory of beauty is that beauty is the way that the sort of surface of something, what you encounter from something, the way that it suggests to you and promises to you that if you spend time with it, you get to know it, more will be revealed, and that will be valuable, right? So
Yeah.
beauty, he says, is the promise of happiness, right? That's Stendhal, but the idea is that like that beauty is it beckons you to learn more, right? And but there has to be that initial glimmer of on the surface, as it were, this sort of initial glimmer that pulls you in, right? So like you said, like a lot of these things go down easy, right? That's that glimmer, that's that sense of like this is just a joy, but I also want to get to know it. Like I also want
Yeah.
to try to understand it. And so you start out with that pull, but then it gets deeper and deeper and more rewarding the more time you spend with it.
I could not agree with that philosophy more. I'd never heard it's literally the exact conversation that me and my wife had when we were getting before we got married. It was just like 2 months before, something like that. And she was worried that, she was 23 at the time, that when she was 33 or 43, that she wasn't going to be the same person and she wasn't going to, that I wasn't going to love her the same way in 10 years from now, that kind of thing. And it's 15 years later at this point, but my response in that moment was, look, I'm kind of taking a bet right now. I love you right now with everything that I am, but I think I see potential that I'm betting on that the person that you're going to be when you're 33, the person that you're going to be when you're 43, I'm going to love more then than I do now. So
Oh
that's the
yeah.
gamble that I'm making because I see that thing inside you that I don't know fully what it is yet, but God damn it, I want to get to know it. And that's exactly what these movies are.
And Nahum would love that because that's exactly how he presents the view is that he says like the way that we fall in love with art is just like the way we fall in love with people.
Okay.
Same structure. He'd love that. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking the
Thank
time to do
you.
this today.
Yeah.
This was a pleasure, and
Total
congrats
blast,
on the
man.
book. I really enjoyed it, and it's okay to love bad movies. I'm gonna check that out next. That's definitely gonna be one I
Awesome.
get through
Well, if
this
you want to
year,
talk about it, I'd be happy to.
dude. I will. I will absolutely hold you to that. Once I read it,
Awesome.
it's on the list. It'll be on the short stack, and I'll reach out, man.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll look forward to hearing from you.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Congratulations.
Yep, you too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.